Welcome into the Behind the Wall pregame show. We are here live at Campus Steaks, downtown State College on Pew Street. Make sure you guys come through here. We got the big uglies. Everybody loves them. You've been seeing them since you were watching Penn State games as a little kid. They will be here at Campus Steaks 6 to 8 p.m. tonight. So make sure you guys come check that out. We're going to have – Joe, we're going to have a DJ in here tonight? What do we got going on? We got a DJ outside of Campus Steaks. We got Big Uglies here. And then we have Tyler Warren coming in Sunday morning, 10 to 11 a.m. here at Campus Steaks after the Whiteout game. So make sure you guys come on by. Penn State, Washington. It is the Whiteout. Let's get into this for a little bit. We already got some questions, so we'll hop right into this chat. I am live at Behind the Wall with Landon Tangwall on YouTube if you guys want to come through. David Botner says, why are we struggling to run the ball the last few weeks? Is it more just Singleton and Donka being banged up? All right, so, I mean, Penn State really has struggled to run the ball these past 4 weeks. Once we got to Illinois, we were dominating really in the run game, 240 yards on the ground, and the Penn State run game was the reason that we were able to beat Illinois. They took away the pass game, and we relied on our guys up front, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, tight ends, and the offensive line to get it done. And then we go to USC, and it's like, okay, they took away the run game, but I don't really know if they did take it away. They didn't really stack the box. We just weren't able to run the ball efficiently against USC, and then it just kind of started to stack. We had some injuries, and Nick Singleton being banged up really hurts the explosiveness of the offense because as much as, you want Katron Allen to be a fantastic running back, he is, but explosiveness isn't really his forte. Katron Allen is going to get you 5, 6, 7 yards, and that is kind of what he does. That is his specialty. So if you're Penn State, you need to be able to come into this game and establish the run. I will say that. And I think this is a game that you can do that. Washington in the past 5 games. So really once they started Big Ten play, they've given up 160 rushing yards per game. So that's obviously somewhere where you can attack if you're Kotelnicki in this Penn State offense. And honestly, I think you have to get the run game back on track because you ask why the whole offense is just off and it's not the same. And it's because those trick plays that Andy Kotelnicki does that everybody loves and all those motions and fun formations only work if you can run the ball, because if there's no threat of running the ball, that backfield action with jet motions and pulling guards and stuff, it doesn't actually threaten the defense in any way. So if you're Penn State, if you're able to rush against this Washington front that really has allowed, you let Iowa go for 220 yards on the ground. Michigan went for 180 around there. They were letting Donovan Edwards, Michigan's running back, break off some really long runs. So there is an opportunity for Penn State to get this thing going. Appreciate you guys. Shout out Dave N in the comments. Joe, your steaks are the best at Campus Steaks. They are. Make sure you guys come on through Campus Steaks if you are in State College. But yeah, I mean, like I said, to finish that off, I just think also the other piece of that is getting Bo involved in the run game. And I will say, up to this point, it was really difficult when you just put Bo in for 1 or 2 plays here or there. It doesn't have a ton of success because Bo can't get settled in. When you're just throwing Bo Prabula in for 1 play and then he doesn't come back in for another quarter and a half, well, as a player, like anybody, you start to be like, oh, okay, you don't really feel like I can get a good flow of the game going. I can build confidence because I just know my whole thought process rides on this 1 play. And if it's bad, that dictates how I feel for the rest of the game. And honestly, if Bo goes in and his first play is not good, think about it. They're probably not going to go back to that right away because it was his first play. And now he has to sit there and kind of feel that bad play for how long? Another quarter? So when he comes in the next time, a quarter later, and he's been having to sit with a bad play for that long, I mean, how do you think he is going to do? It's going to continue to stack. And then on top of it, it's extremely predictable. When we bring Bo in, we are running the ball. There really is no element of a pass when you bring Bo in. Defenses know that. So you creep up, the safeties creep up a little bit. The backside linebacker isn't as worried about the wide receivers, and just overall, it's harder to run an offense when you can't run the ball. Dave N said, at this stage in the season, was it me or did receivers seem to get tangled up with each other on a few plays? Well, look, so the reason why a lot of Penn State wide receivers are getting kind of tangled up is because they run a ton of rub routes. And what that is one wide receiver kind of gets in the way and the other wide receiver runs around him and tries to use him as a natural pick. And so we have been doing that a ton, especially with Tyler Warren. And I'll be honest, Ohio State shut that down. They were getting over top of the pick routes. They knew what was coming. And we didn't stretch the field. I mean, think about it. Every single game at the beginning of the year, we threw a deep ball. We threw a deep shot to Amari Evans. It felt like every week. I think for the first 5 weeks, we did throw a deep ball to Amari Evans. We haven't thrown a deep ball since USC. Wisconsin and Ohio State, we did not throw a pass that was deeper than 20, 25 yards. So when you're not threatening a defense deep, they're able to come up. And then, like I said, those safeties start to load into the box and it gets harder to run. And then your entire offense is kind of non-existent. That's what we saw with Penn State last year. And that's what happened. All right, we're going to talk some more comments. We are live on Twitter as well. I just found out how to do that, so that was cool because we got a pretty big Twitter audience, I'm not going to lie. Bo did thrash the Badgers. Well, that's my point. Like, Bo Pribula was able to do what he needed to do when he had 2.5 quarters to operate and get comfortable and kind of get into a flow of what the offense looks like with Bo. But he doesn't get to do that in a normal game. And, and that's honestly the toughest thing for Koroniki. If you want to get Bo involved, I don't really know how you do it because it's clearly not successful when you are just sprinkling Bo in for 4 or 5 plays throughout a game. And it's not like you're going to take Drew Aller out for extended periods of time. You're not taking Drew Aller out for an entire drive because he is playing like a top 20 quarterback in the NFL draft next year, top 20 pick. I firmly believe that, just what he has put on tape. But last week, he was not helped out. There was nobody open. His receivers were blanketed. They put 2 guys on Tyler Warren, and no wide receivers were getting separation. I don't know what you want Drew Aller to do at that point, really. He was not put in a winning scenario. Why are we struggling to run the ball last few weeks? Is it more we already talked about that one. Singleton definitely appears to be playing injured without the normal push he had in the beginning of the offseason, Dave says. Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you get to this point in the season, listen, nobody's healthy. Everybody has something, and you just don't hear about it. And some of them are a little bit worse than others. And I think Nick Singleton, since he got banged up in that Illinois game and then didn't play in UCLA the following week, he has probably been hurting. And anytime a running back has a leg, anything, lower body, anything like that injury, you don't have the same speed. You don't have the same explosiveness. So it's so much harder to break off those long runs if you're Nick Singleton, if whatever, ankle, foot, whatever he's got going on, he's just not the same guy. And Kaytron Allen obviously is not necessarily the explosive running back. He's you put him in a 4-minute offense situation when you're trying to chug the clock down, and he grinds away those yards like we saw with Wisconsin. And he, can break off a long run, that outside zone we ran versus Wisconsin where he scored the touchdown. But that is not Kaytron Allen's bread and butter. That is what we've been missing with Nick Singleton. And then on top of it, Cam Wallace got hurt, I think, against Kent State, and he was a really explosive running back. He was the number 3 guy that not too many people talked about just because you got Kaytron Allen and Nick Singleton in front of him. But he was a really, really good running back that he was turning a lot of heads at camp. So hurts to lose him. And then Quentin Martin is injured too. And it's like, how many guys are just going to keep getting banged up? And then Nick Singleton was hurt, and Kaytron Allen's like, shoot, okay. Kaytron Allen had 21 carries, I think, when Nick was out, the game Nick was out. So, I mean, they put the load on him, and it's hard to deal with. Thrill in the comment section asks, what happened to upgrade the wide receiver room? Any hope in the pipeline? I mean, look, at the end of the day, with the wide receiver room at Penn State, where we're at right now, we're going into week 10 of the college football season. No one's just going to really pop out at this point. I don't think you're going to have anybody break out. Like, you can say that week 1 or week 2, but we are at week 10. We just need, and I think it can be Trey Wallace. And it's like, I know there's a little bit of a sour taste in everybody's mouth from that Trey Wallace pick where we did not get in the end zone before the half. We were on the 1-yard line. But the play, it's overshadowed because the play before that, he had a really nice 50-50 ball where he went up, he got the ball, he caught it over the Ohio State defensive back, and it was a great catch, but it got completely overshadowed just because of the play that followed where Ohio State intercepted Drew Aller on a pass that should not have been an interceptable pass. But at the end of the day, it's like you cannot win more than one playoff game without a true number 1 wide receiver. And that's what we saw. You can get past a Boise State. I think you could even get past a Notre Dame type team, but you start playing Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio State again, Oregon, they're going to be good enough to double Tyler Warren, just like Ohio State did. And then can you win on the edge one-on-one with your wide receivers? That was the challenge that Jim Knowles and Ohio State gave to the Penn State offense. They did not come through when they were challenged. So they haven't been able to show that they can do it yet. I think they can do it, and I think Trey Wallace can be the number one guy because we need someone to be able to go up, and Drew needs someone that he can throw 50-50 balls to, and he has confidence outside of Tyler Warren. Because if you don't have that as a quarterback, it really gets hard to kind of get that team going. How would you scheme the passing game this week, given Washington's pass defense is statistically one of the best in the country? Yeah, I mean, statistically, they're one of the best, but I really think that's kind of overinflated a little bit just because they played Iowa and Michigan. I'm going to be honest. I think they have a good pass defense, but I think it's completely blown out of proportion how good Washington's pass defense is. I'm going to be honest, just because they played two teams that do not pass the ball, and then you play a couple slack teams at the beginning. I mean, most people do, but I think Drew Aller will have time to pass. I will tell you, this is a Washington defense that has not generated a ton of pass rush. They have played 2 sacks in the last 3 games, so they're not even really getting a sack a game. I mean, this is an offensive line for Penn State that maybe might be a couple steps back from last year. I think especially after what we saw this past Saturday, they are a step back. But still, nonetheless, Penn State has a good offensive line this year. And I think that's where you can take advantage of Washington. They don't have a pass rush. You will be able to sit back there for Drew Aller. And like I said earlier, be able to stretch the field out a little bit. Be able to throw the ball deep if you're Drew Aller and make that defense say, okay, we need to back off a little bit. Drew Aller might burn us deep with Amari Evans, Trey Wallace, that type of thing. All right, we are still reading comments off the comment section. You can watch live at Behind the Wall with Landon Tangwall on YouTube or at Landon Tangwall on Twitter. Leave a comment and we will get to it. Chris Backner asked, how big of a benefit do you think it is for this week to be the whiteout coming off that loss, less likely to come out flat? Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to lose a whiteout game against this much of an inferior opponent. And we've done well in the whiteouts against the inferior opponents, Auburn, Iowa, Minnesota. I mean, we've handled it pretty easily. Now, I think you're coming into a situation, if you're Penn State, I don't know if it has been more flat in State College or the Penn State fans have been more flat really since this time last year after we lost to Ohio State and Michigan. Because it feels like, once again, obviously to the fans, Penn State can't get it done in the big game. And as much as it's like, it's okay, hey, it's okay. We're in a 12-team playoff. But it's like, that doesn't matter. We get it. But it's still the same old thing of not being able to beat the good teams. And it doesn't really instill any confidence in the fan base that, okay, that's cool. We can beat the teams we're supposed to beat, but we can never beat the teams. Like, we can never pull one off. And so it starts to get to a point where it's like, that gets annoying. And then on top of it, you got the NIL stuff and asking the fans for money. So that you can see it kind of all boiled over after the game ended with boos and then players walking up the field. And I gave my take on this. At the end of the day, if you're a football player at Penn State and you just poured everything you have, you dedicate all your time, and that's everything. That football is your everything, and you lose to Ohio State, you're feeling all the effects, the emotions, and then you have fans booing you. You are going to be mad. I'm not saying I would have walked off. I never would have walked off. We were here. I was here for 9 overtime Illinois in 21. Didn't walk off then. But when you start booing players, you can kind of expect some backlash to that. But then on the flip side, the fans, you haven't won it in that long. You keep losing to these teams, and it's this close. And every time against Ohio State, you have a lead, and you blow it every time. And it sucks. So I see both sides of kind of what happened last Saturday with the whole kind of alma mater incident. Things got a little testy after a loss, but I think everybody's feeling all right coming back into this. I just definitely think this is probably the most dead I've ever felt going into a whiteout, because normally we've been undefeated in the past years going into whiteout. So obviously with the November whiteout, it's going to be a little bit different. Sun probably will go down. Let's see. We're going to kick off pretty much 8 p.m. That's going to be crazy. I think that's the latest game in Penn State. That's I can't remember the last time we kicked off at 8 p.m. So everybody, you better get your naps in during the day. Make sure you get some rest, get some good food in you, take a nap at the tailgate. If you need to let a family member crash in the car, do it, man, because we are going to need all that support out there. All right, let's talk a couple more questions. On a positive note, having this loss, feeling that we never want this season again, Coach James Franklin and Coach K will adjust. They're the best in the business. I mean, look, I think that is the question. Let's see. Andy Kotelnicki really hasn't had to bounce back. He has always had an answer, whether we had to go in the first 4 weeks. We were one of the most balanced teams in the country. We were passing for 250. We were running for over 200 for 4 straight weeks. We go into Illinois, and we have to rely on the run game. Illinois was really great against the pass. Their pass defense is legit. Drew Aller passed for like 125 yards, but we were able to run at will on them, 240 yards. Then you go into a couple weeks later, and it's pretty much the opposite with USC. USC completely took away our run game. They said, hey, we're not going to let you do what you did to Illinois, so we're going to make Drew Aller beat us. And Drew Aller was tested in that game at USC. He went through some struggles, and I think that is where we saw that this year's Drew Aller is really a different Drew Aller than what we've seen in years past. But we were able to rely on the pass game. But now you come into an Ohio State game where nothing works. You're not able to run the ball. The offensive line was kind of getting bullied up front. At the end of the day, I mean, Ohio State was just more physical. And especially when you look at that final stretch of those 4 plays at the goal line, at the end of the day, they got out physical and they got out coached. And I'll tell you how each way. They just got out physical because it is mano-a-mano on the goal line. You are hat on hat, and let's see what you got, especially in a situation at the end of the game. And then you get out coached because you take your best run blocking offensive lineman in Vanga Ioane and you put him at wide receiver for 3 of the 4 plays, and you run inside zone up the middle. That doesn't correlate. You take away your best run blocking offensive line. And I know they kind of got him into the fold a little bit, but he was still really didn't have too much impact. You got out coached there. And at the end of the day, on the 4th down play, they wanted to hit Tyler Warren in the flat, and Ohio State was ready. They knew that Penn State wanted to hit Tyler Warren in the flat. It was covered. Then Drew Aller turned back and tried to throw to Khalil Dinkins. He was blanketed by 3 Ohio State defenders. Game over. And then Ohio State, to add on to the being more physical, Ohio State then is on the 1-yard line, and they just churn out first down after first down. I think they routed off 10 rushes to finish off that game. If you're Penn State, you need to come back. You have to answer this weekend. You pretty much just got bullied as much as the score didn't fully reflect that. And like I said, saying all of that happened, and we still only lost by 7. And we were inside the 3-yard line 2 different times and didn't score a point. So we can beat Ohio State, but not if we're getting out coached and they're more physical than us. That's what, to beat Ohio State, we have to be that. They are the more talented team. We have to be the team that is coaching better and is more physical. As you saw, they just have the raw speed. They have Caleb Downs, who's the best safety in America. And I think if KJ Winston's healthy, maybe Caleb Downs isn't the best safety in America. But unfortunately, we really missed KJ Winston too, flying around, and he would have been really involved with that run game in and around the line of scrimmage, making tackles. How about bringing back that 3-back T formation? Yeah, that was a good one. I don't think we'll go back to that because that was kind of like a Yurcich special. I don't think they want to get involved with anything too Yurcich. Although the swinging gate pass with Tyler Warren, he did the center snap at USC and then caught the touchdown. Yurcich did that last year against Michigan for the 2-point conversion that did not turn out well. So who knows? But I do. We need to get back to being more physical. Obviously, I think the tight ends are doing a great job. But look, we just got up front. We got out physical a little bit. I think on the 2nd down play it was, Katron Allen kind of had a hole, and 2 Ohio State guys were in there, and they stuck him, and Katron Allen went down. Like that, at the end of the day, like they just came with more physicality, and they put us down. It's just that simple. If you want to check out the film breakdown, I broke down all 22 end zone view of that film on my YouTube channel. But, man, I don't what are you going to do? You get out physical to now coach. You got to go back to the drawing boards. Jeremy said, I never thought PSU would beat OSU until last week before the game. OSU was down, confident, but had dudes at every position where we have dudes. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that was the best matchup against Ohio State I think we've had in a long time. There was a lot of positions where I was like, okay, I like where we're at with this. But it just didn't work out. There was obviously one of those big ones being our defensive line versus their offensive line and their run game, and Ohio State just ran all over us. And that clearly was not a strength for Ohio State at all, or for Penn State, excuse me. Ohio State was able to lean on the run game, go for 170 yards, And, the rest is history. That's how they grinded out the game. And really their two biggest touchdowns were both big-time play-action plays. And we got sucked in. The defense got sucked in because of the run game was doing so well. They got sucked in by the play-action fake. So it's obviously this is a good opportunity for Penn State to bounce back this week against a Washington team that has kind of been all over the place. So let's talk about Washington for a little bit. I know no one even wants to talk about Washington. We're sitting here Friday and everybody's still talking about Ohio State. So I think we got to give a little bit of and I hope, trust me, I know the players aren't, but I hope there's not too much of a distraction leading over from last week into this weekend, because obviously an emotional loss like that really does hurt. But this Washington team were they started off kind of weird. They've been iffy. They've won some good games. They lost to Washington State in the Apple Cup early in the year, but then they come back. Iowa and Indiana both kind of beat them down, but then they also beat Michigan, and then they also beat USC last week. So they look. When you say that we got outcoached, do you mean Franklin or Andy Kotelnicki and Tom Allen as well? I mean, look, it goes top down. I'm just going to be honest. Like, that's how it works. But, I mean, I'm not just saying that we got outcoached. I'm telling you, I've watched the film multiple times. There was just so much different things from a scheme perspective that Ohio State did that they saw on film and said, okay, here's how we're going to take advantage of that. We're going to add this wrinkle to our offense or defense to make up for that. And they executed on that, and it didn't really seem like we were doing the same thing with that. So I think I'm getting past notes. That was I won't read this on there, but getting past notes from some customers at Campus Steaks that are dead on with their opinions. I'll leave it at that. But no, I can't find the stat, but is it true we don't have one wide receiver touchdown this season? No, we do. We definitely have a couple wide receiver touchdowns. What I will tell you is coming into this week, and shout out Tyler Donahue. He's been covering Penn State football for a long time here, but he came out with a really, really interesting stat about basically how much our wide receivers are lacking at this point. So Penn State has signed 10 wide receivers out of high school since the 2022 year. So we've had 10 guys come in and play for us. Those 10 guys have all accumulated 498 yards and 5 touchdowns together. Ohio State's freshman wide receiver, Jeremiah Smith, through his first 8 games, already has 678 yards and 8 touchdowns. So another 170 yards and 3 touchdowns than our 10 guys that we have brought in at wide receiver in the past 2 to 3 years. And one guy at Ohio State is having that type of production. So obviously I know Jeremiah Smith is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime wide receiver, but Ohio State seems to get those every year almost. But, it's hard when you are not recruiting as well as the other team. Ohio State consistently finishes inside the top 3 in recruiting, and guess where they finish the seasons? Normally inside the top 3, 4, 5. Penn State generally finishes recruiting. We might have a good year and we might be inside the top 5 in recruiting, but generally we're 7, 8, 9, 10. And guess where we finish our year? 7, 8, 9, 10. So that is it's a direct reflection of how you do in recruiting to how you finish on the field. If you look at someone's recruiting in 2019, check in 2022 what their record is. I guarantee all those players will be in their 3rd year. It is a direct correlation. All right, let's talk a little bit more about this Washington team, though. So overall, they've been really wishy-washy. You don't really know who you're going to get. Are you going to get the team that beat Michigan and USC and looked really physical? Or are you going to get the team that let Iowa rush for 220 yards on them and Indiana blew them out? And I think there's a couple places where Penn State can bounce back against this Washington team up front. As I mentioned, in the run game, their defense has allowed in the past 5 games, so really since they started Big Ten play and they started playing Michigan, Northwestern, and some little bit of a better defenses than they were playing at the beginning of the year, past 5 games, they have allowed at least 160 yards or more rushing. So this is a defense that you can gash them in the run game. And as I mentioned, Caleb Johnson in Iowa took them to the woodshed in that game and did not even give them a chance to breathe. So I think that's, if you want to put a whooping on Washington and say, okay, how can we make this game not even close? The answer to that is you have to be successful running the ball. I think Drew Aller can get it done, obviously, and we've seen him be able to do that. But I don't think this is that game. I think you rely on your crowd, you rely on your run game, and you get back to your roots this weekend, and that is the backbone of this Penn State offense is the run game. It's been that, and there really hasn't been too much of a time where it's like we're able to truly rely on our run game in past years where we can say, hey, we can't pass the ball. We need the running backs to get after it and the guys up front. We did that Illinois. Can we do that again this week? Because not only that, but obviously we'll get into the wide receivers for Penn State in a second and where there are some matchups there. But overall, I think this offense can get back humming a little bit, to say the least. So I will give you guys this stat to talk about Penn State's rushing attack. Weeks 1 through 4, so West Virginia to Illinois. And I know we played Kent State and Bowling Green in there. But we were averaging 251 yards rushing per game those first 4 games. Then when you go to the back 4 games we're at right now, from UCLA to Ohio State, those games, we're averaging 121 yards rushing per game. So 251 down to 121. I know the level of the opponent and some injuries obviously play a factor in that, but it's clear that the run game is not where it has been in recent years, honestly. So we have to figure out a way to get that fixed. Like I said, that is what Penn State is going to rely on. So a hurt Anthony Dunk, a hurt Nick Singleton, we got to get this run game back on track for Penn State. And this Washington team, I mean, the Washington team is really interesting. They run the ball really effectively. They have a couple guys up front on the offensive line that allow them to do so. And then they also have a backup quarterback that you will see come into the game, and they're probably going to run the ball. So keep an eye out for that. His name is Damon Williams Jr., and he will come in on 3rd and short on any goal line situations, and he will run the ball. He will run read option, and they also did a trick pass with him where they did a double pass similar to the one at USC where Drew ended up throwing it to Bo. Bo threw it to Drew, and then Drew threw it to Tyler. Expect them to bring it out because this is their Super Bowl. This is Washington's Super Bowl. This is pretty much maybe one of the best teams they'll play all year. They're going to bring all the tricks, and so their backup quarterback is a big piece of that and a big reason why they are a formidable rushing attack. We're usually recruiting around 14 to 15. I'd say not 8, 9. Penn State out coaches their recruiting very often, but when you get to the big games, it's like no one cares too much about that. That's not going to get talked about. The announcers aren't bringing up where you finished in recruiting when you lose a game. So it's not really a cop-out. But at the same time, you need to recruit better if you are James Franklin and company like that. At the end of the day, we're just not getting the guys we need. And that goes back now to NIL support. Can you get these big donors? And, we can't be relying, unfortunately, on the everyday Penn State fan. This is a blue-collar fan base that travels. They come to so many different games. It costs $1 million to get a hotel, to get, travel here, get the tickets. And then, you want someone to pour in whatever, even if it's just $100 a week. Man, a lot of people don't got $100 a week right now. So it's hard to ask your fans. And then you go and even if people are blaming the Penn State fans and say, after we lose to Ohio State, I don't think this happened as much this year, more in the years past when we just kind of got curb stomped by the better teams. But it's like, hey, it's on the fans for not, taking NIL serious. And it's like, dude, it can't be on the fans. This isn't really as an amateurism anymore. This is something completely different. And guys are getting paid. And it's like at the same time, and I was talking about the whole alma mater thing earlier. Well, guess what, by the way? When guys start to get paid money and guys on that field, trust and believe, make over $1 million, you can get booed. You start to get paid $1 million, fans have the right to boo you. That is how that works. So as much as I advocate for the player, and obviously me being out there, the booing sucks. And in the moment, are you pissed at the fans for booing you? Absolutely. But to an extent, do I understand if the product on the field isn't what you want as a fan? Yeah, I don't condone it all, but I somewhat understand it. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, that's a good question, David. He asked about Tyseer Denmark, who is a young freshman wide receiver, and he was really turning heads in camp this year. Coach Franklin and a couple of coaches, they gave him a lot of praise. Coming in right after camp, Coach Franklin holds a big press conference and kind of gives a little bit of a look at who is going to be impactful. And I'll give you guys this. So freshmen, when you come in to the season after camp ends, Coach Franklin sits down with all the freshmen, and you're all in his office, and he goes one by one in front of everybody, and he will say, if you're green, yellow, or red. And if he says you are green, which very rarely happens for freshmen, that means that you were impressive enough since you got here your red shirt's going to be burned this year. You're going to play more than 4 games. The team needs you. If you are yellow, and that also means you're not going to be on scout team, which is pretty big for a freshman because it is kind of how it works. You just get put on scout team and you get beat up every week. You have to go out in a jersey that isn't even your own when you're on scout team. You have to wear the number of the guy that you're pretending to be, and give the opposing offense or defense the best look possible. So that's kind of what you looks like if you're labeled red or yellow. But a couple of guys a year are labeled green. So this year, Tyseer Denmark, I'm assuming, was labeled yellow. He was not a green. The only guys that were labeled green was Cooper Cousins, who I think we have seen in every single game this year. And then obviously Dejon Lane, who since Kevin Winston Jr. went down with the season-ending injury, he has had to play a lot. Didn't see him as much last week against Ohio State, but some freshmen coming into the fold definitely here for Penn State. And Franklin said in his press conference this past week, Tyseer Denmark is someone that he expects to get some looks, he said. So I'm curious to see if that's right now. It's a good weekend to start. I think this is a pass defense that I mentioned earlier. The stats are a little bit blown out of proportion. Their stats make them look better than they really are when you play Michigan and Iowa, 2 teams that it looks like the forward pass was just invented last year for Iowa and Michigan. You're going to have decent passing stats. So saying all that to say, I do think that there is some opportunities for Tyseer Denmark to get into the game because you saw other wide receivers for Penn State just not be able to get separation. If you throughout an entire game cannot get separation when you're one-on-one and the defense is testing you, listen, I don't know what else to say. That's a wide receiver. That's where you come. That's why you come to Penn State. You got to win one-on-one, and you haven't been producing. Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for coming out. Make sure you guys come on down to Campus Stakes. We got some cool stuff going on tonight. If you are in State College, 6 to 8 p.m., the Big Uglies will be here. You don't know who those are the guys that are always in those scary masks, and they're in full shoulder pads on the sideline, maybe a helmet too. And they have been cheering Penn State on for ages. So they will actually be here. We have their signature cup, Big Uglies cup here. They will be signing this. You can get this at Campus Stakes, Student Bookstore, and online at the Student Bookstore. So we'll be here 6 to 8 tonight. DJ, we're going to have a good time. So come on down to Pew Street, party with us, kick it. And then Sunday morning, Tyler Warren, the superstar of Penn State football, will be at Campus Stakes from 10 to 11 a.m. So if you plan on staying the night, which if you're going to the game, I don't know, that's hard not to stay the night at that point because the game might not end until technically the next day. So good luck with that, fans. But if you are around, stop by Campus Stakes. We'll have breakfast Sunday morning, coffee, and a ton of Tyler Warren to go around. Too many opening drives have been really good, but ended in field goals, Ronald says. 60 and 70-yard drives feel good, but if the score is 3-0 afterwards, it is a huge letdown. Yeah, I mean, trust me, that is starting fast is by far the biggest emphasis that I think Coach Franklin has, and he knows that Penn State has struggled with that for years. I'm just telling you, it might not seem like that's his emphasis, but I'm telling you, being in those meeting rooms, it is constantly about starting fast. That's why if you've ever listened to any of the players that do content, we've talked about the competitive periods at the beginning of practice. James Franklin always does a competitive period, whether he makes the O-line and D-line go against each other, DBs and wide receivers, but there's something to start the beginning of practice off that is competitive to try to make you start fast. So that has been an emphasis. It just hasn't worked for Penn State. And I don't have a specific answer as to why we can't start fast. I don't know if there's one thing to point to. And I'm sure it starts to get frustrating after a while when you just don't start fast ever. And it's like, come on, we have to. And it's harder, too, when we were used to the defense picking up the slack for so long. And, it's okay if the offense started slow because the defense was going to make the opposing offense go 3 and out 2 or 3 times in a row. I mean, that's what life was like with Manny Diaz. It's not exactly the same right now for this Penn State defense. And I think that is where Washington can take advantage a little bit. They will pass the ball a lot. Their quarterback, Will Rogers, I'd compare him a lot to Braden Locke. I don't think he's as good as Braden Locke. I think he is better than Wisconsin's quarterback that we saw a couple weeks ago. So somewhere in between those two. But he'll pass the ball 40 times a game. I mean, he will sling the ball. Washington is a really good rushing attack. They have not been held under 100 rushing yards all year up to this point. So we have an opportunity to be the first guys to keep them under 100 rushing yards. And let's see if the defensive line and linebackers come ready to play. I think this game is going to definitely be on the shoulders of Kobe King and Tony Rojas. How effective can they be in the run game and then the quick pass game? Because that's something that Washington likes to do, like we've seen with Wisconsin, like we've seen more so with Illinois probably, is those quick passes. You're getting the ball out in under 2.5 seconds, trying to not allow the Penn State pass rush to really materialize and get after your quarterback. So that is something to expect from Will Rogers. But he's not always going to score. Fun fact about Will Rogers, once we get to tomorrow, it will have been 28 days since Will Rogers, Washington's quarterback, has thrown a touchdown pass. So fun little stat there. It's been about a month. Let's see if his first one back will be against these Penn State Nittany Lions. And I think a passing defense that definitely misses the presence of KJ Winston. I don't think they have been what we thought they were going to be. Now, honestly, though, it could be a lot worse. I mean, we brought in a ton of transfers. We have A.J. Harris at cornerback coming from Georgia. We have Jalen Kimber coming from Florida. These are two guys that we didn't know how they were going to pan out, and I think they've panned out pretty dang well up to this point, but it just feels like as a whole, we're just missing a piece. I do think that piece probably is KJ Winston, and it's hard. I was coming into the season saying I think every time we go out there, it doesn't matter who we play, KJ Winston's the most talented guy on the field. When you lose that caliber of a player, the team is going to suffer a little bit, and then obviously having to play young Dejon Lane, a freshman, in his place is not something that is ideal if you are Tom Allen in this Penn State team. Jeremy in the comment section asks, what kick time is the most difficult to get the most energy for? Noon, 3:30, or prime time? Dude, I would normally say 7:30 is no problem, but like 8 p.m., I can't. I'm always, I'm always honest with you guys. I've never seen people trying to sell their tickets so hard than this weekend. Like it's crazy how many people are like, I'm selling my tickets, I'm not coming, whether it's a combination of it being 8 p.m., it being on Peacock, people are mad about that. I've seen stuff on Twitter, people are mad about the election, they don't want to come. There's everything going on as to why people do not want to come. So I think it being at 8 p.m. too doesn't help. People are like, I am going to be tired. So as I said earlier, make sure you guys get yourself a little nap Saturday. If you need to start out the tailgate, have a couple drinks, maybe have some food, lay down in the car, and then get back to it. But you got to make sure you're rested and ready to go for 8 p.m. kickoff because it's going to be a late one. But to answer your question, the noon kickoffs are the hardest, I think, to get up for. It's just you're tired. It's early to play football on a noon kick because, I mean, you get up at like 6, wake up's probably at 6 a.m. when you're at like the Nittany Lion, the Penn Stater is where the football players stay. So that's where they're going there tonight. Let's see, what time is it? 3:40. In about an hour, the team will head over to the Penn Stater, and they get in there. They'll watch kind of a hype video, and then you sit down and you get to have player shares. And player shares are really cool. So normally it's like 1 or 2 seniors, and it's thought to be your last year. I do remember, I think Sean Clifford shared his 5th year and then shared again his next year because we didn't know if he was going to come back or not. But it's kind of, you just like share your story and you're very vulnerable with the team and you get to know people a lot better. So it's something really cool that Coach Franklin and the staff does. So you get in there, you do that, you get to know some people better, and then you go eat, which is the same meal every time, which I don't know how some people feel about that, but it's nice to know what you're going to eat before a game. And then there's a Sunday bar at the end of it all. So it's good. The guys eat a lot, and then you go into some meetings. You'll have about 2 hours of meetings after dinner, and then there's snacks. There's games. Guys are always stretching out. Some guys will be playing dice. Some guys will be playing cards. You just kind of relax, and you're not really watching tape or anything. If you have to watch tape by the time you get to Friday night, let me tell you, you are probably in trouble for the game the next day. So it's all about just getting comfortable and just kind of getting into a groove for the next morning when you are in those hotel situations at the nighttime. Does Franklin need to start benching players for unsportsmanlike penalties? I mean, no. I think that Elliott Washington call against Ohio State, I really was not a fan of it at all. I think he was over top of him already when he tackled him, and then he kind of stood up. And I'll grant, he flexed a little bit, but at the end of the day, how many times do you see that throughout college football, and you're going to call it in that situation, in that game, after Penn State gets a third down stop, and you know the magnitude of that call, and you're going to call, like, if Elliott Washington punched him in the face, yes, I'm not going to say anything. But that's such a ticky-tacky call to make in a game like that, in a moment like that. It did. I mean, I'm not going to say the refs rigged the game. That's what Franklin Fanatic just said. But it felt like the refs were on their side, which, no one was surprised by that. It's Ohio State. Welcome to the Big Ten. Since 1993, it has been that way. Ohio State gets the calls, and we don't get that. So that makes me think back. Do you guys remember Auburn 2021 when the refs made us punt on third down? I remember that. That was crazy. We've had some interesting moments with the refs. I feel like overall we've been screwed more than we have been helped by the refs. Thinking like Minnesota 2019. Let me not bring up bad memories anymore. Let's just talk about this week. Do you know how Denai Dennis Sutton and Donk are doing? Yeah, I think they're both going to play. It seems like Denai Dennis Sutton is going to be back. He only played about 5 snaps against Ohio State, but was out there practicing this week. And someone that I think needs to be back. When he was healthy, he was leading the nation in tackles for loss. So that's someone that can be really impactful in the run game and stopping the run game. And that is where Washington really succeeds. So having Denai there at defensive end to set that edge and be strong in the run game is important. So I think he will play. Anthony Donko is someone, dude, Donko hurt. He's hurt. His whole body is banged up, and he played really well against Ohio State. I'm not going to lie. That the offensive line not playing good of what I said, that does not fall upon Anthony Donko. Trust and believe that. He has been really solid at right tackle, playing injured, which is kind of a staple of offensive line play. But, man, he is doing it at a high level right now. So, impressive to see what he is doing. And talking about Will Rogers, Washington's quarterback, a little bit more real quick. Similar to Locke that we've played, a couple quarterbacks we've played, Altmaier, it kind of feels like they're good. Not as much Altmaier, but more Braden Locke for Wisconsin. They're good for one interception a game where they're just going to kind of bug out. And it's like, oh, what are you doing there? Why would you throw that there? That is how I see Will Rogers, the quarterback for Washington. So there's an opportunity for Jalen Reed, Zakee Wheatley, get their hands on the ball and make a play. Give Drew Aller. I think that's how you kind of get this game in check. You get the run game going. You actually punch it in to the end zone. And then the defense just once, maybe twice, if you want to really help out, give Drew Aller the ball in plus territory and let him really start to go to work. Now, one thing about their passing game is that, like I said, they will pass it. They've passed it up to 40 times in a game, but they have some speed out at wide receiver. Keep an eye on Denzel Boston. He has 9 touchdowns on the year. Will Rogers only has 13 touchdowns, so he has 9 of his 13 touchdowns. Clearly, when Will Rogers is trying to throw the ball for a touchdown, that is where he looks to Denzel Boston. So they're going to scheme him open, someone we really have to keep an eye on. But I think we can stifle their passing attack a little bit just because of their offensive line. They've let up 10 sacks over the past 3 games, so teams are really getting after them up front. They're a lot better in the run game than they are in the pass game as an offensive line. So excited to see if our guys can get after them. I think Zane Durant has a favorable matchup on the inside, and he's someone that has been one of the best defensive tackles all over college football. Shout out our boy Zane Durant. He has a cup here at Campus Steaks. So if you want to get Zane Durant's signature cup, come on down to Campus Steaks. It's also at the student bookstore and online at the student bookstore. We'll have Tyler Warren in here Sunday morning, 10 to 11 a.m. Come on by, the Superstar and Big Uglies. Those guys, we see them at every game, home, away, the biggest supporters of Penn State football. Their cup is right here. They will be here at Campus Steaks, downtown Pew Street, 6 to 8 p.m. tonight. We're going to have a DJ, a good time. Come out and party on Pew Street. Let's see. Washington is wearing white jerseys. Odd question, but is it difficult to all see the players in white jerseys during a whiteout? Not really. I think they'll be all right. I will say the one thing about that you do want to do, if a team is wearing white, if you're an offensive lineman, if you are a cornerback for Penn State, make sure you're wearing white gloves because you don't want to wear blue gloves. the refs can see that holding a lot easier if you have blue gloves on a white jersey versus white gloves on a white jersey. So hope to see a lot of white gloves on these Penn State players. Be smart with that. Nick Hill asked, which wide receiver do you think will step up after last week? Man, I mean, at the end of the day, I know some people feel some type of way just because of how the game shook, but it's still Trey Wallace. He's still the most dynamic guy. He can go up and get the 50-50 ball like he did right before half. No one's talking about that play just because what ensued right after it, where we threw it up to him again, and it was a pick. And I think that was completely just unlucky. And yes, Trey Wallace didn't go up and get it again, but he's still the only guy that has shown the ability to win jump balls and to create a little separation. So, I mean, obviously he didn't do it against those Ohio State DBs. I think they are really solid at DB with Ohio State. And they had, when they played Oregon earlier in the season, they were struggling. And they had a lot of miscommunication and just stuff that didn't make sense when watching the tape. And it seems like they've shored that stuff up. And Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator for Ohio State, he came with a good game plan. Like I said, we got, he out-coached Kotelnicki, and that's the truth of it. And, that's what happens in the industry. You win, you lose some, and, that is the good news about the 12-team playoff. You can afford to drop one, and you are okay. Like normally, I think in the past, the reason why the fans are kind of so down this week is because we're so conditioned to a Ohio State loss, meaning the end of the season, meaning that the season is probably over. That's it. But that's not really what it means. And I get, we're probably not playing for a Big Ten championship. I think there's one scenario, but we have to have a lot happen and get some help from a lot of people. So, by the end of the day, you probably, if you handle these 4 games that you should handle, you have a home playoff game in Beaver. You're looking at another whiteout. And probably, I don't know, is that have we ever had a football game in Beaver in December? Probably not, I would venture. So, my guys, back at Campus Stakes. What is up? What is up? So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if this home playoff game, like I said, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but it is a real good opportunity. We have one, and that should be fun to see what Guido schemes up. I talked to Guido D'Elia, who was the creator of the Penn State Whiteout, on my channel. I put that up Wednesday night. He's the guy that came up with everything. He's the reason why you hear Zombie Nation when you are in there, that song that we all love. There's everything, the Jumbotron, putting the highlights up there. He started all of that, every tradition that we know and love. Appreciate you guys coming through. Thank you so much. And sat down with him and just kind of told the story of how the Penn State Whiteout came about. So you can check that out on my YouTube channel at Behind the Wall with Landon Tangwall. I'm currently sitting here. We got the Bengals and the Ravens game from last night replaying, which I honestly thought was a straight-up classic of Thursday Night Football. I'm actually at the moment right now where Chase Brown fumbled the ball when the Bengals were up 2 touchdowns in the third quarter and with the ball, and then they fumbled it away. And don't do that to Lamar Jackson. Let me tell you what. Do you feel that holding on the offensive line hasn't been called as much nationwide this year? Hey, look, you're talking to a former offensive lineman. I'm always going to be on the side of the offensive lineman. I'm sorry. Maybe offensive line play is getting better. Who knows? That is something that has been evening out. I think a little more in college football, NFL not as much, but offensive line play is getting better across the board for sure. Does Franklin play best player at position, or does he give preferential treatment to upperclassmen? No, Franklin will play the best guy at each position. And, you've seen that he's done that for a while. If you are a freshman and you're talented, you will play. So that's why I told you guys the story of how he ranks the freshmen green, yellow, or red, and that's where you know kind of where you stand. Why don't we try fades with Warren at the goal line? He's the better contested catcher than Wallace. Yeah, I mean, no, it's a thought. Why split Tyler out wide, isolate him, and make them have one-on-one coverage there? Force them into that. I'm completely with you there. Around the goal line should be Tyler Warren's area. He is 6'5", 6'6", 260. People talk about give Drew the ball near the goal line. Give Tyler the ball near the goal line. That's not easy to stop. And then, if you want to throw a jump ball to him, isolate him, split him out at wide receiver. I will say that's something that we haven't seen. I can, think back to I guarantee you the Patriots tried to do that with Rob Gronkowski. That is the type of guy. That is how dynamic Tyler Warren is. Yes, he is a Rob Gronkowski style player and even a better blocker, honestly. So I don't know, Jay. I'm going to be honest with you. That is something I really do question. Let's get Tyler Warren the ball at the goal line, some jump balls. Sarah Jackson said, how is Washington's secondary? You think this will be a chance for the wide receiver corps to break free? I think they're, like we talked about a little bit earlier on the show, they're an all right secondary. They are ranked really high when you look at the stats, but it's because they played Michigan and Iowa, two teams that are not good. Their quarterbacks barely qualify as quarterbacks, so they were not passing for a lot. But best believe they still ran for a lot on them. So there's an opportunity for the wide receivers to get back on track. Hopefully, we need it. I'm like I said, I've been honest with you guys. We have to have a good, just a good wide receiver core. At least a couple guys that can get open, but more so, you need a number one that can separate from the fact that Tyler Warren is double teamed and you don't have anybody else that can make something shake. And there was times Tyler Warren had three guys on him, and he's like, I can't do it all. I can't do everything. And you just look across the board, and there is one guy on Trey Wallace, one guy on Liam Clifford, one guy, covering the running back, and they're clamped up. And it's like, I don't know what else you want them to do. Ronald Eaker said, season isn't over, but as a fan, I am dying for some confidence that we can win 3 in a row versus the top 12 teams in the country once the playoffs start. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the whole thing with losing to Ohio State. And I said this last week before the game. That Ohio State game meant everything to the reputation of Drew Aller, James Franklin, the Penn State team as a whole, how people look at them. But it really meant nothing in the standings of the actual playoffs when it refers to this season. But I do think to the fans, to a lot of people, to anybody watching, what a loss last week did is it still just kind of continued the notion that Penn State can't win games that they are not favored. And I'll tell you, James Franklin does a hell of a job not losing games that he shouldn't. Those upsets are very few and far between for James Franklin. But you can't get over the hump of winning just every once in a while. Winning a game you're not supposed to win would really, I think, help out just how the fans feel about, like I said, if we win against Ohio State there, we're vying, we're playing these last 4 games and we're hot. And then we're playing Oregon for the Big Ten championship and the opportunity to be the number 1 team in the nation heading into the playoffs. So I don't think we've been number 1 since probably 99. We might have been number 1 at some point, maybe, I think. So it's been a while. And so that opportunity being basically in our hand, up 10 at home, Will Howard's first pass is a pick 6. And it's like, holy crap, we might actually beat these guys. And then we know what ensued. And it hurt just because, look at it, we can't get off Ohio State. I swear, guys, you guys we're not less than 24 hours yet, but we're close to 24 hours away from kickoff. And I'm convinced no one cares to hear about this Washington team. It's pretty amazing. But no, I mean, this losing the way we did, and Ohio State came back, and look, it wasn't like Will Howard came out. Now, he had that touchdown pass with that answer after he threw the pick 6, but it wasn't because he just started slinging it. They ran the ball all over us the rest of the day for the most part. Like, it was rough to see that drive. They had an inside zone that they broke outside. Judkins broke off for like 15 yards, and then they had the speed option where they unbalanced us to the left. They put 4 guys on the left side. There was nobody on the right. We didn't have contain. They threw the speed option, and they did that twice to us, and we did not have an answer. So when I say outcoach, it's little things like that. And at the end of the day, Ohio State, Chip Kelly, and Jim Knowles came in with a better plan than Koto Nicky and Tom Allen. That's what it was at the end of the day. And then on top of that, you get out physical, and it's hard. And as I said earlier, to beat a team like Ohio State, we have to be the ones to outcoach them and out-physical them. They have the better talent. They have more skill. They end up higher in the recruiting rankings every year. So we have to make up for that and be the team that upsets, be the team that is the smarter, has the smarter coaching and is like, oh, okay, that was a great call. So do you think teams will continue to double Warren like OSU did? Yeah, I mean, I think Ohio State was by far the most talented defense that we have seen to this point, and I think we'll see all year. So there's a piece of that. Like, no team has Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs is the best safety in America, and there was times where they felt comfortable leaving him one-on-one with Tyler Warren. And like, I'll take you back. I know it's hard to memorize it, but I forget exactly when it was. It was when we settled for one of the field goals. It was 3rd and 9. And we ran a pick rub route. And if you were listening at the beginning, we were talking about how Penn State, that was a big staple of their offense, running a pick route where one wide receiver kind of basically just tries to block for the other wide receiver. and he goes around him and tries to get open. We tried to do that Tyler Warren on 3rd and 9 with like a quick out, and we threw it just 2 yards down the field. Like, we were not stretching the field. If it's 3rd and 9, you need to pass the ball past the sticks or at the sticks at least. So it felt like this offense just kind of crawled into a hole and looked conservative. And honestly, it looked like the offense of last year for the most part. So a big reason for that is how good Ohio State's defense was. And like I said, when you have a guy like Caleb Downs, that neutralizes Tyler Warren. So I don't think any other team we play, outside of whom maybe we play in the playoffs, I don't think any of them have a player the rest of these last 4 games that can stick with Tyler Warren. So, I mean, yes, you can try to double team him, but it's also still hard. You're going to get Tyler Warren his touches. You're going to get him at quarterback, center, wide receiver, slot wide receiver, tackle. You know, who knows where he's going to line up. So, I mean, that's kind of the positive side to Kotelnicki. And what he does is you don't know where Tyler Warren will be. But Ohio State had a good idea. I'll leave it at that. I was there for Minnesota loss as number 1 versus Is that who we lost to? Did we lose the Minnesota in '99? That when we were number 1? That sounds pretty brutal. I'll tell you what, I have a really good story. I normally save my stories. I'll tell it again Minnesota week. But I was a recruit, and this is 19. So this is after the 2019 season when we lost to Minnesota at Minnesota, and that game just completely, I mean, that really hurt. And obviously we finished off good with the Cotton Bowl and stuff like that, but that could have been it that could have changed the trajectory of Penn State football for a while. And so I am at my high school, Good Counsel in Maryland, and I'm wearing some Penn State gear. I'm working out. It's the weekend, and we have these big basketball tournaments in Maryland all the time. And so a ref that's reffing these basketball games, he comes out, he's kind of stretching, and he looks at me and he goes, you know, do you go to Penn State? And I said, yeah, no, I'm thinking about going there. I'm a recruit, this type of thing. And he said, oh, I was a ref in that Minnesota Penn State game this year. He said, I was the one that threw that offensive pass interference on Penn State that made James Franklin, you know, have to. And I was like, what? And he was like bragging to me. He was like, yeah, tell James Franklin. Like I was the one that threw that. I still have that dude's number in my phone. So I won't put him out there, but my man Raymond, he needs to get his comeuppance. That is for sure. Oh, we got the DJ here at Campus Stakes. I think he's already setting up. Guys, you make sure you come down Pew Street. It's Penn State College. It's you start to feel the vibes dancing around. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's not as electric as last week. That was kind of crazy. You couldn't even drive around downtown State College, but it's Whiteout weekend here at Penn State, and it's a good time. So make sure you guys come on down to Campus Stakes. We are here 6 to 8 p.m. tonight. Live DJ setting up, great food and drinks. Put it out there. I need his number. I won't do anything. I know it was so crazy how he was like really bragging to me that he was the one that threw the offensive pass interference, and then obviously we know that led to Sean Clifford pick. So that game hurt bad. But listen, we got about 2 minutes left. We got to get back on track against Washington. This is where we get the run game back going. I mentioned it is they have a couple places where we can get going. Their defensive line and linebackers aren't the best. Let's get Nick and Katron back. Hopefully Nick is close to 100%. You're never going to be 100% at this point in the year, but let's try to do it. I think also there's an opportunity on the defensive line to get after Will Rogers. Do not let him sit back there and deal passes. Get after him quickly. He is someone who wants to get rid of the ball quickly. So press up. You have Jalen Reed in and around the line of scrimmage again, like you did against Wisconsin, because that's what they're going to try to do. Run the ball and throw short. And we saw what happened. We took away Wisconsin's pass game a couple weeks ago. Took away their run game, and they didn't have much in the pass game. Locke wasn't that talented of a quarterback. I think Will Rogers is in a similar situation, a little bit better. But if we can take away Washington's run game, that changes their offense as a whole. We have done that a couple times this year. Let's see if we can do it once more. But appreciate you guys tuning in today. This is going to be a good one. Let's see how much Penn State comes out. Let's see how much whiteout energy Penn State has. I feel like this is like the third whiteout of the year pretty much at this point, because we had the whiteout for Illinois, and then I feel like the helmet strike game with Ohio State, it's pretty much a whiteout. So it's like, man, people they got to be tired of wearing white soon. And then home playoff game could be another whiteout. So we might be looking at damn near 4 whiteouts for Penn State this year. Make sure it's still special. That's my only message. But no, I appreciate you guys tuning in to the Behind the Wall pregame show. I am here every home game at Campus Stakes on Fridays, 3 to 4 p.m. But make sure you guys come out. Like I said, we got a live DJ setting up. If you're watching, I'll show you. That's him right there. My man's DJing right here. He's setting up. Yeah, there we go. So come on down to Campus Stakes. We're going to have a good time tonight, and make sure you guys pop out on Sunday morning, 10 to 11 a.m. Tyler Warren, the man, the myth, the legend, will be at Campus Stakes signing his signature Penn State football cup. So make sure you guys come through. Those things are limited, I promise you. 10 to 15 years from now, when Tyler Warren retires with a long Hall of Fame NFL career, you're going to make sure you're going to wish that you had a nice Penn State cup of his, because there's only a couple hundred in existence. So make sure you guys come on out. Appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll talk to you next week.